And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen with your host, Susie Ross.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Susie Ross. This week, we're taking a look at some of our favorite cattle learning center stories brought to us by Fort Dodge Animal Health. Let's take a look. This week, the Cattle Learning Center is focusing on deworming a cattle herd. Dr. Bill Clymer from Fort Dodge Animal Health works at the Longview Animal Nutrition Center outside St. Louis. He had a chance to speak with Cattlemen to Cattlemen's Todd McCartney about the benefits of a good deworming program.
Bill, traditionally, producers deworm in the fall. Explain to us how research indicates that actually it's spring to be the best time.
We need to always consider, of course, what's going to fit the rancher's program, but we also can change these programs occasionally if we need to, if it's more beneficial to that rancher. The optimum time to do this treatment is usually when that calf's about 6 weeks old till he's about 2.5 months old. So, and that single treatment will probably give you the best bang for your buck, the best economic return of all, any time that you could treat.
Bill, there are numerous studies that point to the economic benefits of deworming, am I right?
Absolutely, Todd. Matter of fact, we've done this study many times, or similar studies, and we've always got at least 100% return on our investment. In other words, if we spent $5 for the cost of the dewormer, we got back $10 or more in return.
It's known that that cow, when she reaches 2 years of age and older, she probably can handle a small amount of parasites. But we're looking at the bigger picture, am I right, by treating that cow?
They sure are, Todd. Matter of fact, we found that, a cow-calf pair may put 51 million eggs on a pasture in a normal grazing season. If we figure that 30% of those may become a larvae that the cow can get reinfested with, that means that cow-calf pair, one pair out of a herd of 100 is going to put 15 million larvae back on that pasture for them to pick up again or for some other cow and calf to pick up. So the cow is a factory for the eggs. So we need to treat both the cow and the calf to get our biggest bang for our buck in a treatment program.
Mother Nature can give us a helping hand with parasite control in the form of the dung beetle. Tell us about that.
Yes, this is a subject that a lot of people laugh when we first start talking about it, but it is a very beneficial insect. There are about 90 different species in North America, and a lot of people say, well, we don't have them in our state because we're too far north. Actually, they've been collected way up into Canada. They are very beneficial. There's one particular dung beetle, the Onthophagus gazella, that is probably one of the most important ones. It was actually imported from Africa. And that one beetle, the one single beetle by itself can either consume or bury over 15 pounds of manure in its life cycle. And you put a couple of hundred beetles on one manure pat and it'll disappear overnight. Come on over here and let's take a look at this. This manure pat, of course, we're in the middle of the winter and wouldn't expect much activity, but they probably won't be able to see this, but actually there's a few holes in this manure pat,
right there,
which would indicate that probably some of our native dung beetle species, and they're active, when we get some warm days, they're going to be active during those periods of time. This is not a typical pat from the standpoint there are just a few holes in it, but those dung beetles are attracted to it when it's fresh. They won't, it's not available to them for just, but a day or two. But they come in and start working on that manure pat almost as soon as it hits the ground. And they will actually cut their little brood balls out, lay an egg in that brood ball, and either bury it underneath the manure pat, or the rollers will actually move it quite a distance away and then bury it.
Dung beetle would have an impact on horn flies and other parasites.
What they do is they lay an egg in a little ball of manure called a brood ball, and then that egg hatches. They bury this in the ground, and then when that egg hatches, the immature dung beetle consumes the content of that brood ball. When they do this, they bury the hornfly eggs and larvae. They also bury the internal parasites, so we've got research data to show that they can actually reduce hornfly populations by 95% and the internal parasites by 90%. Just because of the sheer action of that dung beetle physically removing the manure from the top of the ground.
You've stressed the importance of the dung beetle and its effect on parasites. Pasture management, is there a role there?
Matter of fact, there's data to show that a cow can actually cover up like over an acre in a year's time with manure pads. And if they're burying this manure, if the dung beetles are burying this manure, we're going to get rid of those no-graze areas. And the other thing, that the advantage that we have, is we can actually reduce our chemical fertilization that we have to put on a property, because the dung beetles are going to be burying that manure and we're getting more economic benefit. There's been some research studies done that show that we actually increase the forage production in pastures where there's heavy dung beetle populations.
With the benefits of the dung beetle being known, it's no coincidence that you have worked toward products that have less impact on that insect.
Yes, we do. Matter of fact, Sidectin is a product that is very dung beetle friendly. It does not affect the immature stages of the dung beetle, which there are some products that do. So the more we can enhance this dung beetle population, the more help we're going to have with our manure problems and with our parasite problems.
You're working with Mother Nature.
We're trying to, yes.
There you go.
When setting up a parasite control program for your operation, be sure to consult with your veterinarian or local extension service specialist. For more information on parasite control, go to cattlemen2cattlemen.org. We'll be right back.
I was just about to land on a fresh pile of manure when I was strangely attracted to this stuff on the wall. Quick Bait Spot Spray. That's good eating. Ooh, Quick Bait Fly Bait. I know it's gonna kill me, but I still love it.
Quick Bait, Fly Bait, and Spot Spray make a lethal combination to lure flies into certain death.
In 1874, an innovation changed the beef industry forever. It was called barbed wire, and it brought an end to open-range grazing and began a whole new era of cattle management. Today, there's another breakthrough innovation changing the beef industry. It's called Draxxin, and it's one more way Pfizer Animal Health is working with veterinarians and cattlemen to open up a whole new era in animal health. To learn more about Draxxin, talk to your veterinarian.
Any farmer or rancher knows that there are serious diseases that can affect beef cattle reproduction. Cattlemen to Cattlemen's Todd McCartney recently had the chance to visit with a veterinarian from Fort Dodge Animal Health about what you can do to protect your herd.
Kenton, there are numerous reproductive diseases that literally rob producers of their profits. What are the primary reproductive diseases in cattle?
Well, there's a number of them, and some of the major ones are, of course, bovine viral diarrhea virus, bovine herpes virus, leptospirosis, Campylobacter fetus, and trichomoniasis.
Then let's start with BVD. We hear of it linked to abortion.
Yeah, and we will see abortion from BVD, but we can also see other problems, and a lot of that will depend on when, during gestation, that cow is exposed to the virus. So if it's, let's say, at breeding time, we may just see early embryonic death and decreased conception rates. Now, if exposure occurs later on during pregnancy, such as mid-gestation, we can see a lot of another set of problems, such as abortion, or we can see congenital abnormalities in the calf. Calves can be born with hydrocephalus, underdeveloped areas of the brain, abnormalities of the hair, the skin, and bone defects, as well as other problems.
Then the vaccination program, that's where we start, I'm sure.
Vaccination is where you want to start with respect to control and prevention of BVD, absolutely. And well, you need to have a good conversation with your veterinarian to decide, are we going to use modified live viral vaccines or are we going to use killed? Because certain modified live viral vaccines can be used in pregnant cows and some cannot. And those products that can be used in pregnant cows are only labeled for use in those cows if those same animals have been immunized about 30 days prior to breeding with the same product.
Then what is the discussion of PI relative to BVD?
That's a good question. PI stands for persistently infected, and it's rather a unique condition with regards to BVD virus, in that if that cow is exposed at a particular time during gestation, we can generate a calf that is persistently infected. Now, there's actually two ways to generate this calf. The first is, if we have a cow, a mama cow that is persistently infected, then every offspring she will ever have from then on will also be persistently infected. But that's rather an exception. The most common way we see these persistently infected calves is with a normal cow, but she is exposed to BVD virus during about the first 125 days of her pregnancy.
BVD is just one case that can affect the conception rate of your cow herd, but the good news is there are ways to protect your animals.
The producer first needs to develop a good relationship with his or her veterinarian to set up a good biosecurity and vaccination program.
Ahead on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, more tips from Fort Dodge on creating an effective vaccination program.
To some, it's just a pasture. But to you, it's part of a livelihood to be passed along. That's why Fort Dodge Animal Health developed Cydectin with pasture health in mind. Cydectin protects against performance-robbing internal and external parasites. And it's the only insecticide proven to have no adverse effects on beneficial dung beetle populations. Cydectin from Fort Dodge Animal Health, protecting your herd and your pasture, so they can both be passed along.
From fresh tomatoes to potatoes and chicken to beef, we're as picky about our quality ingredients as you are. Because that's what we're made of.
Welcome back. Let's head back out to Longview Animal Nutrition Center to learn about other diseases that can affect reproduction.
IBR exposure in a cow early on, you can just see some decreased conception rates and a transient return to service increase. However, exposure later on during pregnancy, we can certainly see abortions. Cattle that's never been exposed to herpes virus before, you can see abortion rates from 25 to 60%.
Kenton, how do veterinarians diagnose the reproductive form of IBR?
Well, typically what we want to do, we want to collect some good samples of the aborted fetus and placenta and make sure they get sent into the appropriate diagnostic lab. If we can, we like to send in everything, just send in the whole aborted fetus and the placenta. If not, your veterinarian will know what samples need to be taken and where they need to be sent.
What about prevention and control?
Well, here again, the best place to start is with your replacement heifer pool. So sit down with your veterinarian, have him or her set up what kind of program we need to initiate. But with respect to our heifers, we want at least 2 doses, if not more, of modified live IBR viral vaccine in these heifers before they enter the breeding herd. Now, once they're in that breeding herd, then we can just booster them yearly with that same modified live. And the best time to booster cattle, irregardless of the reproductive disease we're talking about, is approximately 30 days prior to breeding.
Let's talk about lepto and its impact on our cow herd.
It's caused by a spirochete, which is a spiral-shaped bacteria, and it has its own motility. So this bacteria is able to move around on its own a little bit. It makes it rather unique. But leptospirosis is a bacterial disease in cattle and other mammals as well as man. So it's what we call a zoonotic disease. It can be spread from animals to man. In cattle, we can see a variety of problems, from abortion storms to sporadic abortions to just decreased fertility and increased services to conception, that type of thing. Prevention of leptospirosis, typically the hallmark of that is a good vaccination program. Most of the cattle vaccines that we have on the market today will have 5 different types of leptospirosis or leptospire bacteria in them. And they are typically combined with our viral products as well. So you can get one good solid vaccine that will contain the major viral components as well as the 5-way leptos that's important to provide protection to your cattle. Trick is the common name we give to a disease called trichomoniasis. Trichomoniasis is actually caused by a single-cell protozoan organism. Now, as with other venereal diseases, the bull actually just transmits it from cow to cow. He himself does not show any clinical signs. It's the cow that suffers the consequences from this infection. And those consequences can include decreased conception rates, long calving intervals, and frank abortions.
Kenton, here's a case where a good record-keeping program could really aid in early detection.
A good record program is vital because those folks that don't keep good records, that calving interval is going to increase and increase, and they're not going to pick it up very soon. So the first year, the producer may only have losses of maybe 10 to 20% as far as number of pregnant cows at preg check time. But the second year, as your number of cows, more and more of them become infected and your bulls are infected and spreading the disease from cow to cow, you can see decreased conception rates of up to 70% that second year.
Well, obviously we know the bull spreads the problem, but what are some things I can do on the ranch today to make a difference in prevention?
Well, you hit on a good point, Todd. We got to start with the bulls. And the best thing to do is to test those bulls and identify those that are trick positive and to cull them. And the best time to do this testing is 2 to 3 weeks after the start of the breeding season.
Well, the discussion of lepto takes you right to Vibrio because most cattlemen link those two together. Tell us about Vibrio as a reproductive disease.
Well, vibriosis, it's another bacterial disease and one that we call a venereal disease of cattle. It's caused by an organism that we refer to as Campylobacter fetus. The old term is vibriosis, but some veterinarians refer to it as Campylobacteriosis now. But either way, it's a venereal disease, and what happens, the bull, as with other venereal disease, he really shows no clinical signs, but spreads the disease from cow to cow. And in the cow, what we can see abortion and decreased conception rates.
Vaccination program.
There again, it's much like lepto, and many of our vaccines that contain lepto will also contain the Campylobacter antigen. So talk to your veterinarian, get a good product that has the antigens together that you need for your cattle, and then just vaccinate for Vibrio the same time you vaccinate for lepto.
Well, then the take-home message here is reproductive performance. It is the cornerstone of a successful bottom line. And you've just identified 5 reproductive diseases that can be disastrous. What is the best way to safeguard this important asset?
Well, Todd, of course, I think the producer first needs to develop a good relationship with his or her veterinarian to set up a good biosecurity and vaccination program. Biosecurity involving identifying animals that are coming into your new herd. Are we going to test them? What are we going to monitor for? How are we going to identify these animals and be sure that they don't bring new diseases into our cattle? And then continually monitoring and surveilling those animals as you go down the road to make sure you don't get a big surprise at preg check time. The other component of that program, of course, is good vaccination. When to vaccinate, what to use, and how to do it the right way.
Record keeping, monitoring, vaccination, and a relationship with your practitioner.
You've got it.
It's important to talk with your vet about a vaccination program that best fits your herd. For more information on reproductive diseases, go to cattlemen2cattlemen.org. We'll be right back.
Purina's wind and rain minerals are research tested and field proven to provide balanced mineral nutrition essential for cattle health, growth, and reproduction. They're highly palatable so cattle consume what they need when they need it. And wind and rain minerals special formulation resists the elements so they won't blow out of the feeder and maintain their palatability even if they've been wet. Wind and rain cattle minerals from Purina Mills, building better cattle.
Welcome back to Cattlemen to Cattlemen. This week, the Cattle Learning Center is taking a look at horse health thanks to the American Quarter Horse Association. Jeff Metters from America's Horse Television and Dr. Tom Lenz from Fort Dodge Animal Health show us how to properly conduct a horse wellness exam.
Well, we kind of start on the outside of the horse with the horse's hair coat. We want to make sure that it's shiny, that it looks healthy, that it's the right length for the time of the year. It's summertime now, so it should be short. We want to look for any bumps or scars or lesions or areas where there's hair loss. Areas we want to pay a lot of attention to are the underbelly because that's where a lot of flies like to work, and sometimes we get skin tumors there. The main area, some of the flies work this area as well as ticks, and also the tail head tends to be a favorite place for ticks. And so we want to pay particular attention to those parts of the horse's skin.
Now when you go to the doctor, they're going to check your temperature. Same here,
right?
Isn't it?
Same thing. That's a simple thing to do. We can just use a common digital thermometer that you can buy at any drugstore. We want to lubricate it and then insert it into the rectum and leave it in the rectum for about 3 minutes and then take it out and read it. Normal temperature in a horse is 100.5. In foals, it's 101.5, so they're a little bit higher. Make sure you stand at the side of the horse when you do this if you haven't done it before, and don't stand behind the horse because some of them resist it. A horse has a fairly large heart. The best place to listen to a heart is on this side, right behind the left elbow and a little above. And of course, the best way to do that's with a stethoscope like this. Horse's normal heart rate, resting heart rate, is around 30 to 40 beats per minute. We want to listen to the heart. It'll make a lub-dub sound, and that sound is the valves opening and closing. So we want to make sure that they're consistent and a normal rhythm. We worry about horses that have an extremely elevated heart rate because that's a good indication that there's some pain or something, or if they have a asynchronous heart rate where the heart beats and then skips a few beats and then beats again.
And in conjunction with the heart, you're also going to pay close attention to the lungs.
Right. Horses have a large lung field. The normal respiration rate in a horse is anywhere between 8 and 16 breaths per minute, depending on the horse and their size. And so we can listen anywhere on the horse's thorax, or we can listen on the trachea and just count the beats. The best way to do that is to look at your watch, listen and count the beats for 15 seconds, then multiply by 4. You can also just stand here and watch the horse's rib cage expand and contract and do it that way without a stethoscope. And so you can hear the air moving through the horse's lungs, but we don't want to hear whistles or crackles, which may indicate some serious problems.
Now how about the abdomen?
Abdomen's very important in the horse because they're prone to colic. The best place, there's 4 quadrants, an upper and lower on each side. We want to listen to each of those. The gut sounds are not so important what sound you hear, but whether you hear sound. If you hear nothing, that's really a bad sign. And so when you listen to the normal horse's abdomen, it's going to sound like distant thunder as the intestines move, or you may hear some gurgling. But the big problem arises when you hear nothing.
Let's start with posture. What can you learn about a horse's posture?
Well, when we look at horses initially, we want to see that they're balanced, that they stand up on their legs okay, that they're not droopy, they don't have a low back, that they move freely, and don't have any obvious lesions or any problems that catch your eye right off the bat.
What does posture tell you about the horse?
Well, we want to look at the horse's posture and make sure it's balanced, it's standing firm in all 4 legs, there's no obvious swelling or defect anywhere in the horse's body, the horse is balanced and symmetrical from the front and rear as well as the side. It's then also a good idea to run your hands over the horse's legs to make sure there's no obvious bumps or swellings that you need to be concerned about. I like to flex the leg and palpate the tendons relaxed, and then also flex it up to make sure the horse is flexible and there's no pain when you flex the joint or any swelling here. Then we want to walk the horse off backwards and then bring it back toward us, and then maybe even trot the horse depending on the situation.
Proper vaccination is another critical component in your horse's health. Ahead in the second part of this week's Cattle Learning Center, Dr. Lenz explains how to make sure your horse is properly protected. Like what you see on NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen? Want to learn more? Become an NCBA member today and receive the National Cattleman Magazine and the Beef Business Bulletin for the latest industry news and innovations. Call 1-866-USA-BEEF or visit beefusa.org. Welcome back. Let's head back out to Dr. Lenz and Jeff Metters for the final steps to a proper equine wellness exam.
Well, we want to check the horse's teeth at least twice a year, and what I usually do is just do a manual examination to feel for sharp points, because horses' teeth grow their entire life and they'll develop sharp points. In the upper arcade, that tends to be along the cheek, and the lower arcade along the tongue. And so if we feel those, we're going to do a process called floating, which is where we go in there with a file and file the teeth down so they fit properly and they don't cause any pain when the horse chews.
Lymph nodes also on the checklist.
Right, lymph nodes are scattered throughout the horse's body. Lymphatic fluid flows through that and helps fight infection. So they will swell up or get enlarged when the horse has an infection. So we want to palpate between the jaw bones to make sure there's no large lymph nodes there that might indicate early strangles or respiratory infection. And also lymph nodes on the point of the shoulder are a good place to check.
And also, and it makes perfect sense, you don't want to overlook it, an eye exam for your horse.
Eye exams are really important. Horses are prey animals, so they have a nice big eye that's on the side of their face. And so we want to make sure their eyes are bright and alert, there's no discharge, that the conjunctiva, which is the lining of the eyelids, is not enlarged or red or inflamed. When eyes become inflamed or infected, they tend to turn white, and so we want to make sure there's no white areas in the eyeball. And also horses, if they do have an eye infection or an injury, will tend to keep their eye closed and try to avoid sunlight. So we want to make sure the eyes are wide open and bright and alert. There are several vaccinations that every horse should receive at least annually, and those are tetanus, Eastern and Western sleeping sickness, and West Nile virus. And then depending on what the horse does for a living, you vary the vaccination program with the time of the year and the geographic location where the horse lives.
Well, the AAEP recommends that you have a wellness examination for your horse at least twice a year, every spring and every fall, to help detect, prevent, and treat small problems before they become serious problems.
To check your horse's health, contact your local veterinarian to set up a wellness exam or head to cattlemen2cattlemen.org for more information. Thanks for watching this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. A new episode airs every Tuesday night at 8:30 right here on RFD TV.